Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. As you can see, we've got a new quilt on the frame and it took me a good bit of the morning to get it on the frame, but this is a picnic quilt and it is much smaller than a lot of the quilts I've done. So it is a lap size quilt, so I'm hoping that it's going to go quickly. And you may be wondering, why am I holding these zip ties? Well, I'm trying a new way of doing the pantograph quilting from the front. So you guys may have seen me do this once before, or maybe twice before. I can't remember. I think it's once before on the tree quilt, and that was what I took off of the pantograph on the back. So I have got, let me show you. So I've got the new pantograph onto the frame, and I've got the laser light set up. That was kind of a bear to do. I kind of forgot where you're supposed to plug it in, so I will show you quickly where you are in case you have a King quilter and you too have forgotten how to use your laser light, or maybe you're getting a laser light and you're going, where the heck do I plug this up? Because it was a bit confusing to me because the instructions said to plug it into the power box up front, which was incorrect. All right, so I have got, this is the pantograph that we're going to be doing on this quilt here, and I can't remember the name of it, but it is from Urban Elementz. They're pretty much the only place I have gotten my pantographs from. I'm sure there are other places, but I don't know. I've just liked theirs, and I like you can get this in a paper, but you can also get it in like a, if you have a automatic one, they can download it. So then we've got here, so I've got my laser light. I do recommend turning your laser light upside down rather than up top, because I feel like if it's up top, you could potentially hit something with it and bump it, whereas if it's down here, it's pretty well protected, so you can still line it up wherever you want to, but you don't have to worry about it getting bumped, which is good. Then you're going to run your line all the way up here, and it's just on the back here. So you do not run it all the way to the front, which is what it sounds like. You just run it to this little port in the back, and that will turn it on. I've got my handlebars on the back also set up so that I can draw with it on the back here. So I have also gone ahead and gone all the way around the quilt and stitched down. Now, some people like to do basting stitches where they do big bites across the entire thing, and I don't really do that. So I know I'm going to bind this anyways, and usually, well, not usually, every single time I've done this, my binding covers this line up, and is actually a nice part for me to sort of gauge where I need to stitch my binding to, and I think it just further helps to keep the quilt together over time and protect it from unraveling. So that's what I do. You know, obviously there may be some people that do it differently. The other thing is I typically will bind my quilt from the back, stitching it on the back, and then fold it over and stitch along the front. And that way I can be certain that when I'm going along this line, I'm covering that line with my binding. And I think that's opposite. I think a lot of people actually bind from the front, flip it over, and then stitch along the back. But I do all machine binding. I don't do the stitch to do by hand. I don't enjoy that, and I just think long term I'm hoping that my machine binding is just going to last longer and keep these quilts safer longer. Okay, the next thing we have to talk about here is the quilt thread, and this really did take me quite a moment. So I'm using the glide thread, and this is the glide cream, you can see right there, and I'm using the Magna Glide bobbins in the bobbin case as well. I've got my machine set to intermittent when I will use it, and I usually do 12 stitches per inch. That's per the recommendation of the company that does this, and I always keep it at a 3% speed. Now, I chose the cream thread because I just thought that it looked the best of everything that I had. I did lay out several colors to look at, so I had a dark green, a lighter green, I even put on there a light blue, a red, a cream, a yellow, and a very white, and I ended up just liking the way that that thread set on the quilt more than the other ones. I really thought I was going to end up using the green when I initially started laying it out, but I felt like it was almost too contrasting against some of the whites and the reds. It just popped a little bit more than I liked. And the cream kind of just blended a little bit better. So that's what I went with. And hopefully I have enough, well, I should definitely have enough bobbins to do this. I think I have one whole bottle of tin. So this is just a lap quilt. We should be fine with that. All right, so the last thing before we get started would be to say that this is the Picnic Quilt by Shabby Fabrics and it was a quilt kit that I put together. That was probably in one of the previous videos, and I'll link that somewhere so that if you want to watch that, you can. It came together really, really quickly. Quite happy with it. I also will show you guys a picture of the backing. I think the backing is really pretty. I did not have enough backing from my previous quilt. There's just, I think that may end up either being scrap or it's going to have to be for like a really small baby Christmas quilt. Never done that. There's a thought process. We could have something like that. And I could use it for that. Otherwise, I just don't think there's enough, or I'll have to incorporate it into some sort of scrappy Christmas quilt. And so I went and purchased this the backing fabric from Hobby Lobby, and I think it worked great. I brought my quilt with me so I could look at the reds, because that was another thing. The tones of the reds and the greens, I wanted to kind of match those, because I feel like you can have really bright Christmas reds, and then you can have like the little bit of muted, and I feel like these are a little bit muted, a little more, I don't want to say antique, but that's the only thing I can think of. They're a darker shade. They're not that bright red that we think of with Christmas fabric. So they are very red, but they're not quite, if you were in a fabric shop, you would understand, or if you've done a quilt like this, then you totally understand. So let's go ahead and see if I can set this up and get this going. Okay, everybody, I have officially been on the struggle bus with this row. This was my third pass that I did on this quilt, and this third pass was terrible. I've literally been working on it for like multiple days. Why, you say? Well, part of the reason is that when I do my pantograph quilting, so I basically have in the past attached one of these tiny little Leonis pins onto the front of my machine adjacent to sort of like the adjacent to the foot holder, and then gone on the back and basically drawn on the quilt with these. These are incredibly hard to find now, and so I feel like unfortunately a lot of these are starting to sort of die in how much ink they have left in them. And on top of that, I'm working with some really dark green fabrics. And the problem with that is these don't show up very well on those fabrics. And so I drew this out, and let me show you here, just so you can see it a little better. And again, I'm not sure how much it's going to show up on camera, but we'll start over here. So you can see here the lines that I've drawn on the pantograph, and you can see where I don't follow those completely exactly. I kind of fit it more, and that's why I like doing the pantograph this way, because I feel like I can make these lines flow more and it looks better. And so you can see even over here, I haven't washed them away yet so that you could see it really shows up pretty decently on the white, but again, that's still pretty light. And then as we move into this, it starts to get really hard to see those lines at all. And the same over here. And so what I ended up doing was I finally put it away and I attached another one, and you can see where it was a little bit darker there at the start, but even then it starts to fade out on this really dark green here, and then you can see it much better on the white. And so I redrew it, and then I went back through, and again, this is really hard to see, is the, maybe you can, there, you can see it more here. I went back over it with a chalk line to try and set it down more while I could see it so that I could go ahead and quilt it. And I mean, it came out okay. I think that looks really good, and certainly nobody's really going to notice at the end of the day that it's not quite exact, but I think that it looks okay. Okay, now in my worry of what am I going to do if I can't get these fabric pins, I purchased several different options. This one's, whoa, I dropped it and caught it. This one's pretty neat in that it has like, basically it's like a little clicky pin, and you can put the chalk in there. The problem is the height. So the difference in height is this. It's not exact. Let's see. Put it down on there. Okay, so that's the difference in height. And the issue with that is with regards as to how it sits on the machine. So when I put this on here, it sits under this lip, which is good because then it can be sort of straight up and down and it sits better versus some of these other options. I mean, this does not, it's too tall. And so then we end up at this weird angle, or it like, because it's at an angle, it rotates whenever I start moving the machine, it'll move this way and this way. And that just doesn't work out. So I thought, okay, I can't do a marker. I can't do a tall click pin, which this Fawn's Importer pin I think would be great because it has a really fine nib to it, and I think it would work great, but that's not going to work. So then I looked at these. This is a chalk pencil, and it's actually one where you pull that thread right there to unwind it, and I thought, okay, I can cut it. So I've cut one in half to put it up against the thing, and it's just not dark enough. It doesn't show up well. With that click pin came these, which a lot of these came broken, so heads up on that. If I don't think it would really matter for the click pin, but for what I was wanting, it did matter. So I thought maybe I can just washi tape those on there, or even use my zip tie to put it on there, and they just broke. They were much too small. I have thought about doing just a regular thick chalk pin and doing it. Obviously, the line would be thicker, but again, I'm quilting it from the front, so I don't think that would matter. So I'm still thinking about going and getting just some regular water washable chalk to use on here. Not Taylor's chalk, because that chalk has like a, for some reason, Taylor's chalk is square instead of circular. I'm sure that has something to do with ergonomics, but that's not going to work for what I want. I need like a stick of chalk, and I think it would fit under there. Maybe I could situate it on there so it wouldn't break whenever I strapped the zip ties on there. I really thought the zip ties were going to be great, because the last time that I did that, I used, I think I was using painter's tape and the washi tape, and the zip ties are definitely faster and definitely better at holding the pin in place. There's really no big wiggle movement with it, but that only works if the pin is dark enough on the fabric. And I feel like the consistent use of going across an entire quilt, that pin just starts to weaken so quickly. I'd really like to know, does anybody know of any like just ink, washable ink that you could then, like, maybe I could recharge the pins? I don't know if that's possible. I am going to look back online and see if I can find them, but they looked like for some reason they were pretty much out of stock or really difficult to get. The company is still manufacturing them. They have a website where it says you can get them, but my suspicion is because of import taxes or something along those lines that are making it just uneconomical to ship it here, because you used to get them for like super cheap. So I don't know what happened with regards to those. But it's making my life a little bit difficult in getting this quilt done and making me regret doing a pantograph this way, and just I should have just done it the old-fashioned way, but it just doesn't look as nice, and that is what I just wanted it to look nice. Not that it doesn't look nice when I do it the regular way, but I just wanted it to it looks much more controlled whenever I'm doing it so I can see it. Understandably so. Everything is much more controlled if you can see what you're doing rather than blindly drawing it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it looks bad. It's just not the best that you can do. Okay, now let's talk about another problem. The other problem happened to be with my bobbin and my stitches. So my top stitches were looking really good, and I didn't really notice it until I don't know, I felt like I was breaking a thread, which I did twice have this thing come off of the hook in the line there, which is really annoying because you really don't notice it until it just really starts to get quite tight and it breaks your thread. But I was just having some stitching issues that were not associated with how the machine was threaded. And what ended up, I was also noticing on the bottom, was that the thread was being pulled down under the machine. So when I would do any loops, you would get that sort of, loop where it's pulled down enough. And so basically that means that either A, my bobbin tension is too high, so it's pulling down, it's the strong one, or B, my top tension is too loose. And so I tightened it a couple of times, but just didn't see the response that I want. So I ended up moving it off of the quilt and putting it over here on these two little sample things to work through my tension. I took my bobbin out, and honestly, I haven't changed the tension in my bobbin machine since I started using the MagnaGlide bobbins. I just haven't really needed to. The tension has been really, really good. So I feel like this many quilts into using those and now having a tension issue, I think that seems okay. And so your tension in your bobbin certainly changes over time, and I think mine's been getting tighter and tighter because when I checked it on the TOA bobbin tension with the MagnaGlide thread and everything in there, it was running about 300, and I don't really know what these what increments it is in. See, it says nanometers. No, mNs. I don't know what mNs are. 10 mNs is each line, but I have no idea what those actually mean. I'm sure I can look it up and maybe put it down there so you guys can know. So I checked that. Whenever I was running it without the MagnaGlide, which maybe that's adding some resistance to it because that's what the MagnaGlide does. So I loosened it down and I ended up running it about 50 less. So it was running around 250 after I loosened it. And then it was still pulling. It was still definitely stronger than my top tension, but then I just adjusted my top tension up and now my stitches are back to where they need to be. So it was a very minor change in my opinion, not anything super major and certainly not very convoluted. I think you always just have to remember which to follow the thread. If the thread is being pulled up, then it's being pulled up to your top tension, and if the thread is being pulled down, then it's being pulled down to your bobbin, and whichever way the thread is going is your strong arm, so it's overpowering it, so either you have to lessen it or you have to go the opposite direction and up it, right? If that makes any sense, hopefully so. Okay, well, all of that to say that I finally got that row done, and now I'm going to go do some research and see if I can actually find some of those markers to purchase so that I can at least replenish my stock, because I do need to do the rest of this quilt, and I think it would be very noticeable if I started quilting this without using the way that I'm doing. If I just started doing it with just the Pantograph, I think it would be very noticeable. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and finish it this way. Maybe the next Pantograph I'll try and do without the markers, but it just looks so much better when I do it. It's really hard for me to accept that. And obviously practice makes perfect. I don't know, you guys tell me, how many Pantographs have you done? Did you get dramatically better with each one? Do you feel like it was pretty consistent? Did you have, what are your thoughts on it? And let me know in the comments down below. Okay guys, I have struggled through these last three, and I'm hoping, and the reason why I haven't posted video is I was waiting for these. So all my hope is in here that these pins, which were out of stock when I initially looked, and then the next day I looked and they were all back in stock on Amazon, so I'll link them down below. But I tried all of those other options, but these pins are just the perfect short size to fit under the machine, right? So to fit under there and to draw like I want them to on the machine. So they're the ones that just seem to work for me. So I'm hoping that a new batch of these will be darker and will show up better on the fabric, because the old ones, I did buy them like years ago. I mean, I think it was even like 2018 whenever I purchased these fabric marking pins. So I'm hoping that the reason that I'm having trouble seeing them and that they're not making it through the entire pass across the quilt is because they're old, and these guys are going to fix it. So we're about to find out. I'm going to crack into these. These are the Leonis water erasable marker pins. They do make air dry ones. I don't know. I haven't used the air dry ones, so I can't tell you on that. But these have been working so far, so let's hope it holds out for me. Alright, I don't know if it shows up as well. It certainly still shows up better on the red, and that the green fabric is definitely harder to see. I don't know if it'll show up on camera. You can see some outlines there, but it's definitely harder to see, but way easier than with the lighter markers. So that is certainly a good thing. The only area that I have a little bit of concern with this, and I think it's because the marker, instead of being straight up and down, got a little moved at one point, but you can see that there's quite a gap here between this, but because I can now quilt this from the front, I can maybe adjust my fabric so there's not as much of a gap, because I don't feel like, although it's hard to see on this, that you get that same gap between. And even as we go down here, you can see the gap is definitely better, or let's see, maybe right here is a little bit better. You can see how much space is between those, not as much as is over here, which I feel like there's a lot more space, right? So we can adjust that though, since we're going to be quilting this from the front side, and kind of tweak it so that it'll still fit and still look okay. Okay, so got that row done, which was definitely easier being able to see the fabric marker, but I did run into a snag, so I lost one where I had to do some unpicking because the top line broke, and I'm not sure if that was a tension issue or if that was an issue with just going too fast, because I was kind of getting a little bit speedy on the machine. And although it has the stitch regulator on there, I still think you can only go so fast on these machines before something's probably going to go ahead and just break. So I did try to slow myself down on the last bit there. Let me show you the stitches. All right, so here's our stitches, and this was our problem area. You can see I kind of made this a little bit bigger to manage the space there. Obviously, I think there is a little bit more space than in some of these areas, but not, maybe not too bad as we progress through this quilt. So it's okay. And I think the upside of this is that we're dealing with these arches and the curls, and these are mimicking snowflakes, and there's no snowflake alike. You guys know I like to talk about using types of patterns that allow for there to be a little bit of just play with them. So, like I was saying, I like to do patterns that are not concentric circles. So concentric circles meaning like a ripple, so starting with a center part and then it swirls around it in even or slowly enlarging circles. So kind of like a rainbow, and you can think of the bluey quilt that I did, and I'll see if I can show a clip on here of the bluey quilt that I did, which did have these concentric rainbow circles that were supposed to be evenly spaced. And if you were doing this on a machine that was quilting it by itself, I think it would look beautiful. I'm just not up to that point. This does include lots of swirls and arches, but they are not necessarily concentric in the sense that they have to be that evenly spaced ripple effect, right? So, or rainbow effect, where you have a line, another line that's making that arch. These are just circles and arches kind of swaying in the wind, and not completely having to be in the exact same distance between them, right? So it gives a little bit more of wiggle room rather than dealing with something that has to be a lot more precise. And I think there are a lot of more modern patterns out there, or even geometric patterns out there, that have that really consistent spacing that I am just not good at this point in my career on the quilt. Now, I do have plans to do another pantograph quilt after this, to try and get it done, but I am, after this experience, thinking I might try doing that pantograph free motion. It is feathers and swirls, if I remember correctly, so I'm hoping maybe I could have a little bit more wiggle room with that, but it always makes me nervous not to be able to see the front of the quilt whenever I'm quilting it. So we'll see how the rest of this quilt goes. I may change my mind if I sort of get into a better flow of it, but I just feel like these first few ones have been a little bit harder than I anticipated, and some of that is just that the markers were dying, so they didn't show up. They did much better on this part as well. The other thing is I have to make sure that whenever I put the marker on here that I am tightening it down so that we don't get it moving, because I think that was the primary issue down here on the edge of the quilt, is that marker just got switched, because I do push it down so that I get good contact with the quilt so that I can see a nice bold line there whenever I am doing the quilting up here, but I think it just snagged on one of these ridges and that caused it to sort of move a little bit, which is in small amounts fine. In large amounts, you're definitely going to get some changes to that pattern that you don't like with regards to spacing of the pattern. Okay, everybody, I got one more row done, and that one went a lot better than the other ones have gone. So my faith is a little bit renewed. I put on my previous contraption, which kind of holds the pin a little bit more, and then I put the zip ties on. I was actually able to leave it on the machine the whole time, and I only had one snafu where basically my bobbin ran out. So it's not really even a snafu, it's just kind of a part of quilting. So my bobbin ran out and I had to change the bobbin, adjust the tension a little bit. I have for the first time been having a little bit of a harder time because my glide thread historically has been great for me over multiple quilts, but I really haven't adjusted it as I've gone. So I don't know if it's just, I can't remember now if I changed the bobbin or not, but I have this sneaky suspicion that I did do that. So I am not going to finish this quilt, although honestly, if I keep moving through really quickly with those, I definitely will finish it fairly quickly, but I'm not going to get it done before I need to get this video up for you guys because it's been a minute since I was waiting for the fabric markers, and I was trying to do some of the butterfly quilt to get some of those blocks done, which are just very repetitive, so I didn't have anything new to put up for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and put this video up. The next time we talk, hopefully, I will be showing you guys this finished quilt and talking to you all about it and letting you know how the rest of this quilting experience went. So, as always, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Little Quilter. Have a great day. Thanks.